It's been over a month since Indian troops crossed into Chinese territory in the border region, and the resulting standoff is still ongoing.
We have a clear and open information channel with each other, but we hope the Indian side can take concrete action and practical efforts. The current situation is, India is violating the basic principle of international relations as well as the international order, and is damaging the peace and stability in the boundary area.
What are the reasons behind the dispute, and what will the implications be? India has just finished joint naval exercises with the US and Japan, and China has been flexing its military muscles in Tibet. Are current tensions being heightened, and where are they leading? With India in its political season, how will its domestic politics affect the potential for conflict? What role is rising populism in India playing in this round of standoff? As a rapidly rising power in the world, China causes concern to some countries. How can it better manage these relationships, especially with its immediate neighbors?
The current border standoff between China and India has lasted for more than a month, making it the most serious border conflict between the two countries since the 1962 China-India border war. What are the reasons behind this disagreement? Where is the surround of conflict heading? And against the backdrop of China gaining global influence, how can the country and its neighbors better negotiate their relationships with each other? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the Beijing studio by Liu Yufa, former Chinese Consul General in Mumbai, and KGM Varma, China correspondent of the Press Trust of India. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Mr. Liu and Varma, the Chinese media, which has been very angry ever since the hostilities, quote-unquote, broke out 1 month ago, has been asking, if this is an invasion by the Indian troops into our territory, why hasn't the Chinese government done anything to drive them out? Now, these angry voices are just one small step short of appealing for the use of force to drive them out immediately. What do you think of their anger?
Let me share with you my understanding. Ever since China and India established the strategic partnership relations in the year 2005, both countries have taken the efforts to move the bilateral relations so much forward. Right at the moment, Chinese leaders and the government do not want this incident, quote unquote, to become a stumbling block to impede the overall bilateral relations. Secondly, Chinese side has so far given so much time for the Indian side, for our Indian friends, to take the sensitive measures. According to what I understand from the international law, when people in uniform get across the border to move into the territory of other side, countries of other side, they naturally become the enemies who will have to face three consequences. First, they can pull out voluntarily, or they be captured, or when the border disputes should escalate, they may be killed. So there are three possibilities. I think the Chinese side has standing, there waiting for the Indian side to make the sensitive choice to seek the first scenario. This is the best result for both sides to avoid the eventual confrontation.
How do you forecast the outlook?
Well, to add to Dr. Liu was saying is, there can be a fourth scenario. Why only you're talking about three scenarios? There can be a fourth one, that is status quo. Why can't we restore status quo? There is a
what do you mean by status quo?
That is by stop building the road and Indian troops has to pull back. That is what probably one is looking at.
You mean the Indian
moment.
troops will have to stand put? They have to stand still. They have to be where they have been.
No, that's right. In the sense that yes,
You
the
mean they
whole
occupy
problem.
the Chinese territory without being driven out?
No, the whole problem started with China laying this particular road, probably early in June or middle of June, and Bhutan has objected to that. Bhutan was the first one to object to that. Their troops objected to that, and then finally, when the PLA started, going ahead with the road, then India had to intervene for two reasons. One, of course, because they had there's a friendship treaty between the two countries. They had their close allies, and Bhutan doesn't have that kind of a relationship with China, even diplomatic relationship. And secondly, that this particular road, India believes that it is aimed at cutting off its northeast through that narrow corridor of 27 kilometers called the Chicken Neck. So it is of course a disputed area. That is as far as India is concerned, as far as Bhutan is concerned. But the problem, the narrative in China is that this is our area, we will be doing whatever it is. We held 19 rounds of border talks, India and China. You have elaborate mechanisms to discuss the boundary issue. And you held 24 rounds of talks with Bhutan. Why this particular hurry? The questions being asked from India is that why this particular time that has been chosen? This particular road, this particular tri-junction has been a matter of discussion in all the boundary talks between the two countries. In 2012, according to Indian statement that has been issued by the Indian Foreign Ministry, that there is an agreement between the special representatives in 2012 that this particular status quo should not be disturbed unless and until we have an agreement.
We have three questions.
Yeah.
Three questions. What do you mean by status quo? Second, does China have the right to build roads inside its own territory? Third, you said Bhutan protested and asked for negotiations, but under what pressure? Did they ask the Chinese side to stop the construction of the road under tremendous pressure of New Delhi? I mean, is Bhutan a nation that enjoys sovereignty that should not be interfered?
Well, I think here, that's one thing I think my Indian friend has to be clear. Indian military forces have stepped across the border with no warning. And then you were proposing the fourth scenario. We have seen in our neighborhoods, you stepped into my front yard, and when I asked you to move out, and you said, you've got to give me something before I pull out.
Dr.
Does it sound logical?
No, you are probably one of the senior most diplomats. You worked in both the countries. You're very familiar with the issues. There is no boundary agreement between India and China. Even in Sikkim, for that matter, we have an understanding, perhaps. There is no delineated boundary as such. There is no delineated boundary as far as Bhutan and China is concerned. So what is it that you're trying to say, at least as far as this 86 kilometers area is concerned, that, this is our territory? That's your claim, please. That's where it rests.
According
you
to,
cannot, it's not that somebody is stepping into your house.
I read from the treaty, before I came, I did some homework. The 1890 treaty does claim and make it certain that this section of the borderline between India and China was certain. This is, for all the 3,500 kilometers long of water dispute, this is the only section.
Liu, last time, we also had Mr. Varma on the show discussing the same issue, the same treaty, 1890. The Indian government refused to recognize the 1890 treaty. Let's put it aside.
Okay, whatever.
It will take us hours to clarify positions on both sides. Let me ask you, do you think it's been an obsessive concern for small neighboring countries, India, that they would be easily turned into yet another Sikkim? Because Sikkim became part of India against the gunpoint of New Delhi, against their will. And it's an open secret that Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, they have all been afraid of the enormous regional influence of India.
Angry. I think this
So
sounds
Bhutan cannot enjoy its own sovereignty. It's not able to make its own decisions. So when you say they protested, under what circumstances did the government of Bhutan protest?
You sound a bit propagandist, I would say. It is India's relations with this neighborhood is radically different from China's relationship with it. We have an umbilical cord with every South Asian country. It is an undivided subcontinent once. There is an Indian in Nepal. There is a Nepali in India. India's relationship with Nepal and Nepalese people, Nepalese society was probably centuries old. It is not that the trade is connected.
From Russia and step into eastern Ukraine to support the Russian-speaking Ukrainian. Is that your point? Is that the propaganda you're talking about?
I'm not going that far. But at the same time, let me just put things.
We have minority Chinese in Myanmar. Do you mean we send in our troops to protect the overseas Chinese in Myanmar and in other neighboring countries in Asia?
Definitely not. When India sent its troops
but
to
that's
Sri Lanka,
the document, international information I got about the huge influence of India to establish your sphere of influence and turf. Is that the turf battle?
But let me clarify this, that when India sent its troops to Sri Lanka for what it was to set right things, even at the invitation of Sri Lankan government, when things turned
why was the Indian government so reluctant to support the war against the Tamil Tiger? Because you had a large Indian Tamil presence inside India, and you were afraid of the unrest, ethnic unrest.
Let me put things in perspective for you. Sri Lanka, the Tamils are part of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is made up of Tamils
inside India. You are afraid of the unrest by the ethnic group inside your country, but they are also Tamil.
The Sinhalese also share. The Sinhalese also share the blood relationship with India. They are not that. This is what I'm saying.
Let's come back to your point.
Let's come back to your point.
You know, the
first of all, do you think this is an obsessive concern for neighboring countries to India, that they would be easily transformed into yet another Sikkim? And the annexation of Sikkim took place under very unusual circumstances.
As a diplomat who was posted in your country for 2 years, I was watching. It's my professional obligations. You talked about the kind of ethnic linkage between India and all the neighboring countries. It is true. All the countries on Southeast Asia has the same ethnic tradition linkage. But what I want to stress is they do not give India automatically the right to do whatever you want to interfere.
I agree with you, definitely.
So
once there are borders, there are no rights.
Yeah, once they are independent, they are just independent actors. But in this regard, you're using Bhutan as the card that I have the right to moving troops.
I've been working here for the past 7 years. Never I heard from China this kind of an allegation. And suddenly you have a border problem with Bhutan, and of course now India's entered into it. Suddenly you say you're questioning the India-Bhutan relationship. This is a relationship that is when PRC was formed, when India was formed. It continued. All these years.
Rama, you put your finger on a very interesting issue about the timing. The timing is about the meeting that Prime Minister Modi had with President Donald Trump. It seems you have got the strong message, because you held a joint naval exercise in the Indian Ocean, the Malabar naval...
Let me throw the ball back to you.
Was that a message that you delivered deliberately to China? Look, we enjoy the strong backing from Japan and the US. Now it's time for Prime Minister Modi to come across as a tough guy.
Let me throw the ball back to you. That who started building the road when Modi, well before Modi goes to US? The whole problem started not by India. Now you started the road, then the Bhutanese objected, then Indians are intervened. By the time that Modi visit was taking place, the timing of it is not India's fault. So please don't again come to that. I mean, I'm not a government representative.
We have different interpretations about the timing. You have the small frame of the timing. You have the broad geopolitical framework.
Can I intervene for a minute? As I looked into the whole scenario, I did travel to the border areas when I was serving as the Consul General. I see the airfields, highway networks along this border. You simply cannot stop China from doing the same you're not seeing that many airfields and military transportation networks along the Chinese side. That was, the construction to improve the transportation.
Dr. Liu, I think, yes. No, let me also...
So when you put this
Is
side...
it true, you've been building the roads in the hope of revenging what happened in 1962. You wanted to take it back. You want to take back your pride and the dignity that you lost in 1962.
Definitely, all of us. But before that, let me clarify that you have the widest possible infrastructure network in Tibet, which China takes pride all the time. You have 6 airfields. You have length and breadth of Tibet that has been covered. You are virtually laying a new train up to the Nepal border. And you have so many airfields connected. Tibet is so well connected, and I have just been reading an article by the South China Morning Post that China moved tons and thousands of tons of weaponry and vehicles in just a matter of days to Tibet. So you are complaining about India, whereas India, just now it has been, the Indian Parliament has been told yesterday or day before that there are 73 roads, very crucial as far as the border is concerned, have not been laid yet. It is only halfway done, because there is a lot of bottlenecks that India is facing. I don't think that you are fair enough to say that Indian infrastructure at the borders is so well connected. Yes, India is looking at Chinese infrastructure and trying to improve as such. That is one point. And the
second point is perhaps since 1962 the Indian military has always taken China as the public enemy #1 and you want to revenge, and therefore the military build up along the border, amassing so many troops there for the mountainous battles.
But the focal point, my friend, let me just make it clear. The building of the roads along the borderlines are the natural sovereign rights for India and for China too. So the construction of the roads, by the Chinese government would not serve as the ground for you to send the troops across the border.
No, obviously not. My reflection is that, the thing is that you have India-China border is a mountainous border. No doubt about it. It is not like any other border that you just walk in and it's not a plateau or it's not just a straight, rather road to take. It is a mountainous, yes, both sides are developing. And we have elaborate mechanisms. In fact, I've just been reading 2 special representatives who served India in the border talks with China, that they have laid out, both M.K. Narayanan and then Shivshankar Menon. Both have worked extensively with the Chinese counterpart, Dai Bingo, to work out an elaborate set of mechanisms, and the present set of National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval. So there is a line of mechanisms that we worked out. Why China is not tapping those mechanisms? Yes, of course. Right now we have a diplomatic negotiations are going on.
Okay, gentlemen, we have the war zone along the border, but we have another battlefield, which means a lot for Prime Minister Modi. That's the election season, the political season in India. Now, 18 opposition forces, to my knowledge, launched their protest. They demand Prime Minister Modi to explain to them clearly what's going to happen to the border standoff between the two sides. Do you think it is under this circumstance, gentlemen, that Prime Minister Modi has to talk tough? And this is domestic politics. This is domestic politics of India. And therefore, he would not blink. He would not show any slightest sign of making any concessions.
Please allow me to...
This will arouse... This will add to the difficulty, the adversity of the circumstances.
According to my observation as a diplomat, a former diplomat to India, I think for any countries in the world, when the general election is taking place, it is the window of opportunity for the government or the parties in power to act tough, so that they could attract more supporting votes.
Excuse
and it is
me.
also
let me
for
challenge
the opposition party.
No, let me challenge you. Has the Chinese government shown any sign to be tough? I don't think so. Other than the demand for unconditional
let me
withdrawal
interrupt you.
of Indian troops from the border.
No.
The Chinese government seems to me to be very weak.
I got to tell you
I'm
that.
sorry for being so frank.
Other countries I'm talking about.
The other side,
No, I got it. No, I
but
got
the
to tell you.
Chinese audience, the Chinese people have been very angry, very demanding about why we can go as far as to tolerate up to 1 month of Indian occupation of our territory.
The reason
Now, let
why
me know
Chinese
your
are
answer.
getting angry
Why?
and angrier, they're
Do you think the
listening
Chinese
to only
government
one
has
voice.
exercised
That is-
utmost restraint?
No.
Not a
let-
single shot has been fired
Yes.
in the hope that we're going to find a peaceful solution.
We should keep
But
that
yet
record.
you say
But no, let me
you want
just
to maintain
complete.
the status quo.
No, let
Can
me.
you clarify what do you mean by status quo?
No, we will come to that. But let me also say there is a political season in China too. You are heading for a 19th Congress. And 19th Congress is not an easy affair. It is one of the key congresses that is coming up. If your entire leadership is going to get a transition during this time. there are people in India who says that, the Chinese leadership is getting strong, getting more nationalistic because you're heading for a Congress. I don't think so. You have certain issues. The Indian government has done a lengthy process, as I have seen from here, that there was an all-party meeting, there was a consensus emerged. The India has also briefed the Foreign Secretary of India has briefed the parliamentary panel, which is a very powerful organ of Indian Parliament, about this particular thing. There was those who attended that came out and spoke about a consensus in India that there has to be a diplomatic solution. It is not such a complex affair that you cannot solve. We have solved certain very, very complex issues in the past, that we have mechanisms to resolve this. And let me tell you that, we are heading for the BRICS National Security Advisors meeting to be held in Beijing on 26th and 27th. When we say National Security Advisors, both the National Security Advisor of India, Mr. Ajit Doval, and Mr. Yang Jiechi of the Special Yang Jiechi of the State Councilor of China, both of them are special representatives of the boundary talks. They know more about boundary. They have been talking about it for the past 3 years. And I'm sure when they meet here, whether formally or informally, there is going to be a lengthy discussion. Already a lot of ground has been... No, let me complete.
Excuse me,
a lot of ground has been already covered.
Let me ask you one more question.
Yeah.
You talk about the domestic politics. This is the context for further development of the argument. China will have two major domestic events. One is international, of course, and the other 19th National Congress of the CPC Central Committee. Both, from the Chinese perspective, aims to create a situation where we would not create any border tensions. We want to create a peaceful environment to settle our both domestic issues and issues of a greater urgency on the agenda of the BRIC summit. So China would not do anything to drive the Indian troops out of the Chinese territory. Do you think this is the purpose of the Chinese authorities?
It is the sincere desire.
Unlike the 18 opposition forces of the Indian side, they demand tough, coercive use of the force to drive the Chinese out of the...
Let me just finish what I want to say, really. It is the sincere desire of the Chinese leaders and the government to create a ideal neighboring environment for the convening of the 19th Party Congress and also for the BRIC summit. It is mostly because of this Chinese side has been, quote unquote, patient.
And do you think the patience is likely to be over after the two events?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't suppose.
Well, let me
make one statement. Let me say, no intrusion will be allowed to go the natural way unless the intruders pull its forces out.
No intrusion will be allowed until after the two events are finished, right?
Not
is
before,
that your point?
Not before.
Let me come to that particular point, that we had a great occasion at the G20 meeting. Probably, I think, of course, China has taken a stand at that particular time. But
the two sides refused to meet with each other on sidelines of the Hamburg G20
There was a meeting.
There was a meeting.
There was a meeting. It is an informal meeting.
Very symbolic.
Look, Yang Ray, there is a great kind of, I don't say friendship, but there is a kind of understanding between Chinese and Indian leaderships over the years. Even with Mr. Xi and Mr. Modi, they have been meeting in the last 3 years. on every occasion, at least 3-4 times a year. They know each other well. I don't think that, whether it is a formal meeting or an informal meeting.
Forget about the meeting.
This
is a diplomatic rhetoric. This is a political gesture. What about the joint naval exercise that you held with Japan and the United States? The Malabar naval exercise in the Indian Ocean. Now, do you think this is a shot in the air? I mean, this is a warning. Look, China, you got to be ready for a fight with the joint forces of India, United States and Japan. Junichiro Koizumi, the former Japanese Prime Minister, vowed to build an arc of freedom and prosperity with India, and India has terminated its old policy of non-aligned movement. You are moving away from this old policy of non-aligned movement to something that is a very short of a holy alliance with the United States and Japan, which had the security pact to guarantee security in Northeast Asia. This time around, the implications of the security pact will be extended to the Indian Ocean.
What is your response if I tell you?
Indian Ocean is the area of navigation. It's the freedom of navigation for the Chinese commerce.
What is your response if I tell you?
Do you think we have a heavy stakes in the Indian Ocean? We want to protect our stakes in the Indian Ocean.
But what is your response if I tell you that you probably...
Do you think this is the open challenge for China's commerce and the stakes in the Indian Ocean? What do you mean by the joint naval exercise? Let me know. Let the Chinese audience have a clear message from you guys. We trust you very much. Let us know. In short, what does the
you got
joint
to stop
exercise...
questions and listen to answers. let me tell you that if there is also yes, if your concern is about Malabar exercises, whether India improving its relations with US and Japan.
50% of the crude oil comes from the Middle East and will go to China through the Indian Ocean.
I have quoted Dr. Liu in the past when, to say about India's strategic independence. Every Chinese diplomat and every Chinese think tank knows the kind of strategic independence India would like to maintain. That is part of India's character when it comes to foreign diplomacy. Indians, I mean, I can't speak for the Indian government, but Indians in general guards their independence and freedom very, very closely. Now, the question is that, today is India, unlike in the past when we had the alliance with USSR, the former Soviet Union, we are a country without alliance today. There are many people in India who are asking this question. Is China challenging India is because we don't have an alliance?
Because you are afraid of the Pearl conspiracy along the coastline of Indian Ocean. You think China will use the Gwadar port, the Hambantota port, and perhaps the pipeline in Myanmar against India. Is that the part of the conspiracy theory that's been held so dear by the Indian media?
You are sitting with a senior diplomat.
Therefore, the joint naval exercise.
It is time for India.
Therefore, you gave a warning shot to the Chinese side.
Let me again answer your question. Isn't it there should be some introspection in China that are we pushing India too much so that it has to run to someone else for this thing? Now, you have friendship. We have since 2005, we worked out a relationship. We have dehyphenated Pakistan from the relationship. That was the promise that every Chinese leader spoke until 2014 when you came out with this China-Pakistan economic corridor. Now the ball is in your court because you have not defined, earlier you wanted to develop a relationship.
We have invited the Indian government to send its representatives to participate in the Belt and Road Initiative Summit in Beijing. You refused to attend.
Why?
Right?
Because you are building a road in our territory.
Will be used by the Chinese authorities to negotiate with the Indian side about the Belt and Road Initiative. By refusing to attend the summit, what do you mean? Okay, you mean you have closed the door for any negotiations, right? Sorry, time is running out. Just 20 seconds. 20 seconds.
Yeah. China and India are the two great neighbors that cannot afford to be hostile to each other. My second suggestion is neither side should take the advantages of the concessions or the goodwill to move beyond reasonable limits. And the third sentence, last sentence, this recent incursion of the Indian military forces into China is another issue as quoted as border disputes. It's an invasion.
Right.
That's how China looks at it, I'm sure.
I'll bring you back for another round of discussion on dialogue to hopefully negotiate a way out. Okay. Although you don't represent Indian government. Thank you so much for being with us. Until next time, goodbye.